The cemetery was utterly silent in the warm Philadelphia morning. The white drapes of the funeral tent billowed softly in the light breeze, and the ceremony unfolded solemnly. Guests were dressed entirely in black, every face heavy with grief. The gold-sheened casket lay right beside the open grave. Beneath it, a layer of fresh cement had just been poured. Inside the casket, Samantha Fairchild rested motionless, the powerful CEO of Vantage Tech Industries, Pennsylvania's leading tech empire. Her eyes were closed, her pale skin wax-like. Peter Fairchild, her husband, stood beside the casket with a neatly folded white handkerchief in his hand. Tears shimmered in his eyes. Pastor Samuel Green cleared his throat, preparing to offer the final prayer. Two workers stepped forward, ready to lower the casket into the grave. Then, a voice tore through the air like thunder. "Stop! Don't bury her!" Everyone turned at once, stunned by the shout. Some people immediately raised their phones, recording the scene unfolding before them. At the back of the crowd, a man in a worn blue work uniform pushed his way through. His beard and hair were overgrown, his face gaunt, but his eyes were bright and unwavering. A name badge was still clipped to his chest pocket. Micah Dalton, regional manager. People stepped aside as though he were a storm sweeping toward them. Micah pointed straight at Samantha. His hand trembled, but his voice did not. "She's not dead. I'll say it again. Don't bury her. Who is he?" someone whispered. "Is he the groundskeeper?" another murmured. "Security," someone barked. Two guards stepped forward to block Micah, but he slipped past them, continuing ahead. The wind kicked up the hem of his uniform like wings. He stopped at the edge of the carpeted platform where the casket rested and turned to face the entire crowd. "My name is Micah Dalton," he said, breath unsteady. "Listen to me. This woman is still alive." Peter Fairchild froze. His face hardened, turning cold as stone. "Get this lunatic out of here," Peter snapped. "Sir, you must respect the dead. Samantha is my wife. She has passed. We will bury her in peace." The crowd murmured. The pastor lowered his Bible. The two workers hesitated. Micah pointed again, his gesture firm, his voice unwavering. "She hasn't passed. Someone gave her something. It slows the heartbeat. It cools the body. It fools the eye. She looks dead, but she isn't. Give her the antidote right now." A ripple of shock swept through the rows of mourners. "Antidote?" someone whispered. "What is he talking about?" Another murmured. Camera lenses tilted forward. A reporter leaned in, trying to catch every word. Peter's face tightened with anger. "Enough," he said, turning to the guards. "Remove him." But Micah didn't move. He lifted his chin. "Peter," he said softly, as if he had known him for years, "you know what you did. And Dr. Mason Keating knows, too." The name dropped like a stone into still water. Every eye darted to the left. The family doctor, Mason Keating, stood there with his stethoscope tucked into his pocket, his lips pressed tight. He looked at Micah the way one looks at a door that should have stayed locked forever. "Pastor," Peter said sharply, "continue the ceremony." The pastor hesitated, fingers trembling on the page. Micah took a few steps closer, slowly approaching the casket. His expression softened when he looked at Samantha. "Ma'am," he whispered almost to himself, "hold on." Then he raised his voice toward the gathering. "Check her mouth, feel her wrist, warm her chest. She's still here. I heard their plan with my own ears." Peter talked about a quick burial. Dr. Mason signed the papers. "Please, give her the antidote." Silence thickened. Even the white drapes seemed to be still, as though the entire cemetery was holding its breath. A woman in a purple coat stepped out from the front row. Her hand trembled. "If there is any chance," she said, "we should check." "Unnecessary," Peter snapped. Sweat shimmered on his forehead. "We've done everything possible. The doctor has confirmed it." "Let them check," someone in the crowd urged. "It costs nothing," another voice chimed in. "Just check." What had been whispers grew into a wave. Heads nodded, eyes narrowed at Peter. The guards exchanged uncertain glances. Dr. Mason cleared his throat, trying to regain composure. "This is absurd," he said with a strange smile. Grief makes strangers say nonsense. I examined her already. Micah turned to him, voice calm but resolute. Dr. Keating, she gave you a hospital. She bought you a car. She trusted you. Something flickered in Dr. Mason's eyes. He glanced at Peter. Peter subtly shook his head. At that moment, Micah set his toolkit on the grass, knelt beside the casket, and did something simple. He removed his jacket and folded it into a makeshift pillow. Please, he said to the pastor, to anyone brave enough, help me lift her just a little. She needs air. Then open her mouth. One drop is all it takes. Silence. A silence so heavy it pressed against the chest. An elderly woman stepped forward. Her hair was neatly styled, her eyes brimming with tears. I am Samantha's aunt, she said. If there is even one small thing we can do, we will do it. The spell over the crowd shattered. Two women moved instantly. A young man in a black suit slipped a hand beneath Samantha's shoulder. The grave workers stepped back, giving space. Together, carefully, they lifted Samantha just enough for Micah to slide the folded jacket beneath her neck. Up close, Samantha looked merely asleep. Her eyelashes cast long shadows across her cheeks. The white cotton plug in her nostril stood out starkly against her pale skin. Please remove the cotton, Micah said softly. Aunt Helen nodded. With trembling but determined fingers, she pulled the cotton free. The air seemed to shift again. Micah reached into his pocket and produced a small brown vial. It looked old, as if it had traveled many roads. He held it up for all to see. The antidote, he said. Her body was slowed by something toxic. This will bring her back. Peter lunged, but two mourners stepped between him and Micah. Let him try, one said. If it doesn't work, we bury her. But if it does, then what? What? Peter spat. Then what? Then we thank God, Aunt Helen said, her eyes sharp as blades. Dr. Mason's jaw tightened. Don't put an unknown substance into— Doctor, Aunt Helen said, her voice low but weighty. If you are certain she is gone, this will do nothing. Let him try. Every gaze was fixed on the tiny vial. The sun slipped out from behind a cloud, its light falling over everything as if an invisible hand had placed it there, on the casket, on the open grave, on the man in the worn uniform who suddenly looked like the last hope any of them had. Micah knelt down. This time his hands no longer trembled. They were steady as though guided by a single purpose. He twisted the cap off the vial and dipped the glass dropper into the clear liquid inside. Then he turned to Aunt Helen. Please, help me open her mouth. Aunt Helen leaned down, gently using her fingers to part the corner of Samantha's lips. The young man in the black suit lifted her shoulders a little more so her head tilted at the right angle. Micah bent close, and almost instinctively the entire crowd leaned with him. Peter trembled violently. If you do this, he began, but his voice suddenly faltered, as if strangled in his throat. Micah raised the dropper, holding it directly above Samantha's mouth. One drop, he whispered. Come back, ma'am. He squeezed gently. A single clear droplet fell, landing on Samantha's tongue. No one breathed, not a single leaf stirred. Micah counted silently, each number heavy as stone. 1, 2, 3. Nothing. 4, 5. A cold gust swept through the white drapes, making the entire funeral tent tremble. 6. Micah's hand began to shake. He lifted the dropper again, preparing to release another drop. Don't you dare, Peter screamed, lunging forward, but Aunt Helen threw out her arm, her voice sharp as a blade. Stay where you are, Micah squeezed gently. The second drop fell, and in that fragile instant, before it even touched, a tiny sound fluttered from her chest, so faint it could have been the wind or the memory of a breath. Was that a cough? Someone whispered, voice hoarse with fear. The drop touched down. Samantha's throat twitched, her lips parted. Then the air in the cemetery exploded into chaos. Screams, cheers, prayers, and choked sobs blended together. Phones tilted in every direction, recording a scene no one believed they were truly witnessing. Samantha's hand twitched. Then her lips parted, releasing a faint, weak cough, small but sharp enough to slice through the chaos like lightning across the sky. Micah instantly leaned closer, his eyes blazing with hope. "She's coming back," he said, his voice trembling yet certain. "I told you she's alive." Aunt Helen clasped Samantha's wrist, her face brightening like sunlight shattering the dark. "She's warm. Oh, Lord, have mercy. She's warm again." A woman in the crowd collapsed to her knees, crying and praying. God is great. God is truly great. But Peter, he felt nothing. His face contorted with rage. And when Samantha's body moved once more, his hand shot into his coat pocket. A small metallic object glinted in the sunlight. Micah froze. "Is that a blade? A syringe?" "Stay back!" Peter roared, eyes bulging, spittle flying with each word. "She belongs beneath the ground. Do you hear me? Beneath the ground." Two men in black suits lunged to restrain him, but Peter shoved them aside with a desperate burst of strength. The crowd recoiled. Mothers pulled their children close. The pastor dropped his Bible, his voice cracking in fear. Micah still did not move. He stood firm in the storm of people, his worn uniform dusted with dirt, his beard stirring in the cold wind. His voice rose once more, stronger, tearing through the air. "Look at her, Peter, look at your wife." Everyone turned, and they saw Samantha's chest rising and falling, weak but unmistakable. Another cough burst out, stronger this time. Her eyelids fluttered like heavy doors struggling to open. A collective sigh rippled through the crowd, as if they had just awakened from a nightmare. Aunt Helen screamed, her voice breaking apart. "She's alive! She's alive!" Samantha's lips trembled, and a hoarse whisper slipped from her throat. "Why?" She opened her eyes, half-conscious, gazing up at the man before her, her voice cracked apart, full of pain. "Peter, why?" In that moment, strength drained from Peter, like water leaking from a cracked vessel. The metal object slipped from his hand and clattered against the cement with a chilling ring. It was a syringe filled with a murky liquid. The crowd exhaled again, but this time it was the exhale of realization. Security guards rushed in, pinning Peter down despite his wild kicking and screaming. "No, no, she was supposed to go, she was supposed to—" His screams were cut short as they locked his arms. The mask of grief he wore throughout the funeral shattered, exposing raw rage and naked ambition. Every eye turned to Dr. Mason. He had backed away several steps, his face ghostly pale, sweat beading down his temple. I diagnosed based on what I saw," he stammered. "I thought she had passed." Micah's voice rang out, sharp as a blade. "Lies. You helped him. You signed the death certificate knowing she was still alive. That wasn't medical error." Samantha coughed again, harder. Aunt Helen supported her. Her hair fell forward, her skin slick with sweat, but her eyes were fierce, locked onto Peter as if piercing through him. "What did I ever do to you?" Samantha sobbed. "Did I deserve this?" Peter lay motionless in the guard's grip. Samantha's voice fractured, each word slicing through the air like a knife. "I gave you power. I entrusted you with a division of my empire. I loved you. And this is how you repay me?" The crowd erupted with murmurs. Some people wept, others shook their heads in disbelief. She turned her gaze, pinning Dr. Mason. "And you," she said, voice broken but icy, "I built your hospital, I bought your car, I lifted you up when you had nothing, and this is how you repay me?" Dr. Mason opened his mouth, but no words came. His silence admitted everything. Samantha swayed, her strength was fading. Micah lunged forward, catching her with hands roughened by labor, yet strangely gentle. His voice was no longer thunder, but a calming wind. "Easy, ma'am. You're safe now." Samantha turned toward him. Their eyes met. In her eyes, wet and fragile, he saw gratitude so deep it could break a man. She looked past the tangled beard and the worn uniform. She saw the man who had pulled her back from death's edge. "Who are you?" she whispered. "Why did you do this?" Micah lowered his gaze, his voice rough and gravelly. "Because I knew the truth. Yesterday I heard him in the car talking about a quick burial, about silence, about how the empire would be his. I couldn't let it happen. Not again. The mourners leaned in, absorbing every word. Samantha gripped Micah's arm, her breath shaky but growing steadier. You saved me, she said. You gave me my life back. Peter thrashed again, screaming in desperation. She's supposed to be mine. Everything is supposed to be mine. But his cries vanished into nothingness, swallowed by tears, prayers, and the furious stares aimed at him. In the distance, police sirens wailed. Squad cars rushed into the cemetery, red lights flickering across the stone markers. Micah, still kneeling beside Samantha, lifted his head toward the sound. His eyes burned not with pride, but with the deep sorrow of a man who had once lost everything. Samantha saw it. She placed her hand over his, gently squeezing. "Stay with me," she whispered. "Don't leave my side." As the police entered the funeral tent, as one chapter slammed shut and another trembled open, Samantha Fairchild, the woman they believed dead, was breathing, and the man who had pulled her back from the grave, the worker the world overlooked, was about to change everything. After the incident, Micah was invited to Samantha's estate. The lights in Samantha's private study cast a warm golden glow, draping soft shadows across the oak bookshelves. Outside the window, Philadelphia sparkled with nightlights. But in this room, the world had narrowed to just two people. Samantha poured 2 glasses of red wine and sat across from Micah. He had changed clothes, just a simple white shirt and khaki pants, but the humble air of someone who had weathered storms still clung to him. His hand trembled slightly as he held the glass. "Micah," Samantha said gently, "you saved my life, but I see something in your eyes, a grief so deep you think no one can see it. Today, will you share it with me?" Micah stared into the wine glass as though searching for courage in its dark crimson. A long, slow silence passed. Then he exhaled, heavy as if releasing years of weight. "Mrs. Fairchild," he began, voice rasping, "I wasn't always like this." Samantha leaned forward. Micah's eyes grew distant, peering through time. 7 years ago, I was a software engineer, not wealthy, but comfortable. I had a wife, Emma, and a little girl named Lily, eyes as blue as the summer sky. She was my whole world. His voice shook. He paused to swallow the lump in his throat. We lived in a small house in the suburbs. Lily loved to draw, butterflies, our tiny house, and the 3 of us holding hands. I put her drawings on the fridge, swapping them out every week. Tears began to fall down his cheeks. Then my company went bankrupt. I lost my job. I applied everywhere, but no one wanted a 40-year-old engineer in a shrinking market. Our savings dwindled. Bills piled up like mountains. Then the fights began. Emma said I wasn't trying hard enough. I said she didn't understand. We screamed at each other while Lily sat on the stairs, holding her teddy bear, crying. I saw the fear in her eyes, but I couldn't stop. I was sinking too deep. He wiped his tears, his hand shaking. One night I came home from yet another failed interview, and the house was empty. No Emma, no Lily, just a note on the kitchen counter. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. "Micah, I can't do this anymore. I'm exhausted, and there's something I need to tell you. Lily is not your child. I'm sorry. Don't look for us." Samantha inhaled sharply, her hand covering her mouth. "I read it 10, 20 times, Micah said. Suppressing a sob, I collapsed onto the floor and screamed. The child I rocked to sleep, taught to ride a bike, who called me daddy in that tiny voice, wasn't mine. He set down his wine glass. His hands were shaking too badly to hold it. I couldn't stay in that house. I stopped paying the mortgage. The bank took it back. I slept in my car. Then the car got towed. Eventually, I slept in parks, under bridges, in alleys. "Micah," Samantha whispered, tears in her eyes. "I wanted to die," he said plainly. Many nights I stood on the bridge thinking just one step, but I couldn't jump. Maybe I was a coward. Then 6 months ago, I became a night watchman at Oakmont Cemetery. No resume required. They gave me a small room in the storage building. That day, when I overheard Peter and Dr. Keating talking, I was checking the back parking lot. It was dark. They didn't see me. I heard Peter say the drug worked. Tomorrow, bury her early before anyone suspects. Samantha gripped her chair tightly. Micah closed his eyes. I stood there in the shadows, shaking. If I stayed silent, an innocent woman would be buried alive. I remembered Emma. I remembered Lily. I remembered how I couldn't save what I had. I failed my family, but this time I couldn't fail. Samantha stood and walked around to him. She knelt before Micah, an act that made the entire room seem to hold its breath. She took his hands and squeezed them. "Micah," she said, voice trembling but strong, "you did not fail. Life failed you, but you didn't give up. You saved me, and now let me give you the same." He lifted his head, voice barely a shadow. "I don't deserve—" "Hush," Samantha said softly. "You deserve this, and more." 1 week later, the trial of Peter and Dr. Mason began. The courtroom was packed. Outside, television vans lined the street. Inside, Samantha entered slowly, supported by Micah. Peter sat there, pale, with eyes cold as ice. The grief-stricken mask he'd worn at the funeral had vanished completely. Beside him, Dr. Mason Keating lowered his head, both hands trembling violently. Judge Helena Brooks struck the gavel. "Court is now in session." Prosecutor Andrew Callister rose. "Your Honor, this is not just greed. This is a calculated conspiracy. A husband who sought to bury his wife alive, aided by a doctor who betrayed his oath." He turned, pointing at Peter. Their motive was control over her empire, billions in assets. But thanks to the courage of one man, this crime was stopped. The prosecutor faced Peter. "Do you deny poisoning your wife? Do you deny ordering the doctor to declare her death prematurely?" Peter leaned forward, his voice icy. "I deny everything. This is a fabrication by a deranged drifter." Samantha shot to her feet, eyes blazing. "Liar! Look at me, Peter. You poisoned my food. You intended to bury me like trash." Judge Brooks hammered her gavel. "Order." Callister lifted a small evidence bag. "Toxicology confirms the substance in the syringe is a paralytic. It makes the victim appear dead." All eyes swung to Mason Keating. He shrank back, his face collapsing. Then he burst into tears. "I was threatened," he confessed. "He forced me. Peter said if I didn't sign, he'd ruin me." Samantha stared at him. "You let them put me in a casket. You let them lower me into a grave. You betrayed me." The prosecutor turned to the judge. "We have the toxin. We have the witness. Mr. Micah Dalton, please step on to the stand." Micah rose slowly. He stopped at the witness stand, his calloused hands gripping the wooden railing. Prosecutor Callister leaned forward. "Mr. Dalton, tell the court what you witnessed." Micah lifted his head. "The night before the funeral, I heard Peter and Dr. Keating arguing in a black Mercedes. I heard Peter say, 'She's cold now. Tomorrow we bury her early.'" His voice strengthened. "I knew if I didn't act, they'd bury her alive. I saw her finger twitch. I couldn't let them lower the casket." Tears streamed down his face. "I lost my family years ago. I was helpless, but not this time, not this time." Soft sobs sounded from the gallery. Samantha whispered, "God bless you, Micah." Defense attorney Robert Finch shot to his feet. "We are expected to believe the word of a man who once slept under bridges." Micah did not lower his head. "I may be poor," he said. "I may have slept on the streets, but I do not lie." The room went silent. Judge Brooks nodded. "The witness has testified with courage." Peter suddenly slammed his hands on the table. "He's lying. They're all lying." But his voice was hollow, pitiful. The proceedings continued, but the outcome was certain. The man Peter never once acknowledged had become the key to his destruction. Samantha and Micah sat together, not as victim and savior, but as two lives once crushed by darkness, now finding light in each other. On the final day of the trial, the air was thick with tension. Peter sat motionless, his expensive suits now wrinkled, his arrogance crushed. Dr. Mason Keating grew smaller by the day. The prosecution called Travis Powell, Samantha's driver. He confirmed the doctor isolated her, refusing to let anyone stay by her side. Then the toxicology expert proved the use of tetrodotoxin. The judge turned to Peter. "Do you have anything to say?" Peter stood, face twisted with rage. "I used to love you, Samantha, but you loved your companies more. I was just a shadow. Yes," he screamed, "I wanted everything. If you had to die for me to live like a man, then so be it." The room erupted in chaos. Samantha rose, her voice fierce. "Love cannot be stolen. Respect cannot be forced. Your greed destroyed you." Judge Brooks' voice was thunderous. "Peter Fairchild, I sentence you to life imprisonment with hard labor." Peter screamed as he was dragged away. Then she turned to Dr. Mason. "You will never hold another life in your hands. Life in prison." The gavel struck. Court dismissed. Samantha sank into her seat, exhausted. "It's over," she whispered. Micah shook his head. "No, ma'am, this is only the beginning. You have your life back. What will you do with it?" Samantha took his hand. "You are my miracle. You're not going back to that storage room. From today on, you walk with me." The heavy doors of Samantha's estate opened as if welcoming a new season. Micah no longer wore the uniform. Samantha gave him a purpose. At first he resisted, wanting to serve in the background, but Samantha wouldn't let him hide. He began working at Vantage Tech, humble and quiet. Then, during a board meeting when the systems crashed, Micah stepped forward. His hands moved across the keyboard with a confidence no one expected. The slideshow restarted. "I used to be an engineer," he said simply. Samantha's voice carried through the room. "From this day forward, Micah is my special advisor." For the first time in years, Micah stood tall. He was no longer the forgotten drifter. He was a man restored. Samantha and Micah grew closer. The evenings in her study became a ritual. They talked about faith, wounds, and second chances. Samantha admired his unpolished honesty. Her heart stirred. She secretly wished he could love her, not as a billionaire, but as a woman healing. But Micah always kept a slight distance. One afternoon in the garden, Micah spoke with rare excitement. "Samantha, I want you to meet someone. Her name is Elena. She makes me smile again." Samantha's heart twisted. She forced a smile. She had hoped for something fragile and foolish, but reality was different. That night she cried alone. But when morning came, she chose to support his happiness. A few months later, Micah proposed to Elena. Samantha sponsored the wedding. The garden was covered in white roses. Micah stood tall in a navy suit, his eyes lighting up as Elena walked toward him. Samantha sat in the front row, watching the man who had stirred her heart step into a new life. "This is what he deserves," she whispered. "Love, a new beginning." Soon after, fate balanced the scales. Samantha met Jonathan Reeves, a man who saw her for who she was, a survivor. Their friendship shifted into a deep solace. When Jonathan proposed, Samantha said yes, with an open heart. On her own wedding day, she walked down the aisle with radiant beauty. In the front row, Micah and Elena cheered. A year later, life blossomed again. Micah and Elena welcomed a son, Daniel. Samantha and Jonathan celebrated the birth of their daughter, Sophia. One golden evening, as sunset poured honey across the garden, they gathered together. Micah rocked his son. Samantha held her daughter. Their eyes met, and they remembered everything. The death that nearly claimed them, the betrayal that nearly buried them. Micah lifted his glass. "From ashes to dawn," he said softly. Samantha smiled. "Yes," she whispered, "from ashes to dawn." As the years drifted by, they remained close, not as lovers, but as souls forged by fire. They had walked through death and found life. They had faced betrayal and found redemption. On soft evenings, watching their children play, they understood a final truth. Love does not always take the shape of romance. Sometimes it is salvation. Sometimes it is the healing we never believed we deserved. Their story stands as a testament that hope can rise from the grave. From ashes, the dawn will always return.